Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to be reading you the story, the next part of the chapter, from the Time Hunters, but I'm going to be doing it from the balcony because it's just beautiful, and you know how much I love sitting out here when it's sunny. So here comes the next chapter, Into the Labyrinth. Okay, here we go. 30 minutes later, Becky stood before a huge iron gate in the central court. The gate merged into a solid rock behind them. Will stood to her right, fully armed with a sword, bow, and a quiver of arrows. Thousands of eager eyes watched them as they lined up, as if in a bizarre beauty pageant. Word had travelled, fast, that Daedalus's gate would be opened. Uncle Percy had obviously decided not to go quietly either. Waving madly at the crowd, he acted like a very desperate aged rock star, trying unsuccessfully to start a Mexican wave, and that every now and again launching into a dance routine that looked suspiciously like the hokey cokey. "What's he got to be in such a good mood about?" Joe asked Becky. "If this Minotaur is as nasty as everyone tells us, then what chance have we got?" He looked at the Argonauts and sighed. Phineas looked deathly white. Theseus stared blankly at the ground. Jason looked as though he'd wet himself. And Hercules had just vomited for the fourth time in as many minutes. "Let's face it, these lot are a waste of space." Becky nodded. "I'm sure Uncle Percy knows what he's doing," she said unconvincingly, as she watched him start breakdancing. A hush rippled through the crowd. King Minos mounted a podium, took a mighty breath and bellowed, "Fair citizens of Knossos, salutations to you all. As you will have heard, Daedalus's gate is to be opened." The crowd roared with pleasure. "These 8 prisoners will enter the maze of Kairos to face the great beast that lurks within. Today, so they inform your king, their valour, their mettle, and their lethal skills will purge our great city of the dreaded horned beast that has plagued out nightmares for so long." King Minos sniffed scornfully. "These are to be our champions. Now have you ever seen a more dismal band of warriors?" Hercules retched loudly. "Brr!" King Minos pointed at Hercules and laughed wildly. "Witness for yourself the courage of our defenders." His dampening eyes returned to the crowd. "Anyway, I shall delay these proceedings no more. Let the—" His speech was interrupted by a distant snapping noise like a popped balloon. Slivers of slivery smoke billowed out from a window. Hold on, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Smoke billowed out from the window in the west wing of the palace. A collective gasp echoed through the courtyard. Becky glanced at Uncle Percy, a strangely satisfied expression crossing his face. King Minos huffed. "Is that fire?" he snarled at the guard on his right. "Put it out and find who's responsible. I want him whipped." "Do not fret, good people," he yelled, even louder than before. "The matter is in hand." He waited until all eyes returned to him. "Without further ado, let the spectacle commence. Open the gate!" A dozen guards scurried to the gate, lifting an enormous iron chain off the ground. The guards heaved it tight and the gigantic gate inched open. Becky whispered in Uncle Percy's ears, "Promise me, whatever's in there won't eat us." "Don't worry," Uncle Percy replied. "If the Minotaur exists, it will rue the day it messed with us." "Why do you say that?" Becky asked. "Because I have a tracker pack strapped to my chest." Becky remembered the bumps and bulges under his tunic. "A what?" "A tracker pack. Trackers wear them when they go on rescue missions. It's got all sorts of exciting stuff inside." "What sort of stuff?" Uncle Percy gave a mischievous grin. "Oh, a smokesboard of devices. K-17 stun bombs, a memorizer, squid grenades, spatial vaporizers, smoke pellets, a tremportalizer, and suction balls. I'm positively a lethal weapon." "You have bombs strapped to your chest?" "Yes." What if it goes off?" "Well, none of us have to worry about being eaten then, that's for sure, do we?" Becky regretted asking. The hum from the crowd rose to a fever pitch as King Minos faced the prisoners. "You will now enter the maze of Kairos, and may the fortune of Hermes shine upon you." "Thank you so much," said Uncle Percy, taking a flaming torch from a servant boy and waving merrily at the crowd. "Cheerio then, everyone. Have a smashing day." And then he turned briskly and entered the gateway. One by one, the rest followed. The temperature fell sharply as Becky placed her foot on the first step. She saw Uncle Percy ignite a series of torches set on the wall, which revealed hundreds of steps that led deep underground. "Well, thanks a bunch, Whitehair," Theseus growled at Uncle Percy. "Our deaths are on your hands." "Ah, don't worry, Theseus," said Uncle Percy with a wink. "I wouldn't be surprised if you, in particular, didn't come out as something of a hero." I'll come out of this as Minotaur dung, Theseus replied sourly. A few seconds later, Becky heard a shattering clang from above. The gate had been closed again. She felt sick. They were off to battle the infamous Minotaur. Terrific, she thought sourly. By the time they reached the final step, they were at least 200 feet below ground. It was damp, musty, and very cold. It must lead under the grey mountains, Uncle Percy whispered. Becky didn't care where it led. 5 minutes passed and Becky found Arthur Evans' words ringing in her head. I found a tunnel that connects to the city of Knossos to the Aegean Sea. Hope filled her. Perhaps they would just walk to the sea without incident. Perhaps there would be no Minotaur at all. Then, just as she began to relax, she heard a rumbling sound, as if the tunnel walls had woken from a heavy sleep. The group froze. Hercules squeaked. They were not alone. Becky watched as Uncle Percy reached into the fold of his tunic. He pulled out 2 tiny objects no bigger than marbles. Will loaded an arrow and aimed it into the darkness. The noise rumbled through the tunnel again. Becky felt her stomach flip. Uncle Percy pointed the torch ahead. The light showed the tunnel forked right. Whatever was coming around the corner. Vroom, vroom. They were footsteps. Becky was sure of that. Heavy footsteps. Just how big was this creature? Then she saw a glittering orange light. Will pulled back the bowstring and took aim. Vroom, vroom. Becky muffled a scream as a very defiant silhouette swelled on the far wall. The Minotaur did exist. The outline was clear. An enormous human body and an animal's head with 2 long twisted horns that jutted from either temple. It was carrying something in each of its massive hands. The Minotaur turned the corner and drew to a halt. It was colossal, at least 15 feet tall, with a muscular physique, a gigantic bull's head, and lifeless, ebony eyes. Frozen, Becky watched the Minotaur approach, and in its mighty grip... And I'm stopping there. You'll have to come back tomorrow to see what happens next. Have a nice night, guys, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Bye.